Let's begin our next topic. We've homed in, my dear friends, quite apropos, because I just got back late last night, so I'm running on fumes, Israel. So now we're getting closer to Mashiach's arrival in our course, and God willing, in real life as well, because the land of Israel is where all the messianic drama is mostly going to be fulfilled. All the chazals that we have, all the rabbinic teachings that we have from the Tanakh actually, and from the Mishnah, and the Gemara, the many Gemarat, and all the other writings, all are going to center and focus in the land of Israel, to be quite deliberate, in and around Yerushalayim, to be more specific, but all of Israel is going to be included in that. We're going to talk about the size of Israel, because the size of Israel, when Mashiach comes, is going to be considerably larger than it is at present. So we're going to discuss that. But to get there, we need to figure out the centrality of the land of Israel to the Jewish people. Okay? So let's start with the land itself. The land itself. If you were to believe everything they say on the internet, the connection to the land of Israel started in 1948, and before that, we had a few straggling Jews who hung out around there, and that's about it. Of course, this is complete and utter drivel, nonsense. The connection to the Jewish people goes back. Actually, it goes further back than most people even realize, unless they study the first Rashi, which I just reviewed last week, on the first pasuk of the Torah. The first Rashi on the first pasuk of the Torah, which we're going to look at today. But let's have a look at the promise of the land of Israel. Each one of the Avot were independently promised the land of Israel. Each one of them. Let's have a look inside, because we are on page 39 of our little books. And by the way, don't forget, for the final, probably not for the midterm, it may help the midterm, you're going to keep reading your future books, yeah? I'm sure you've all read it completely, taken notes on it already. Oh, I'm sure. Okay, so we see that Avraham Avinu was tested with 10 tests. 10 tests of Avraham Avinu. The first test of Avraham was to lech lecha, to leave his hometown, his father's house, mi'aretzecha, u'mimolodtecha, u'mibeit avicha, and to go to the land of Israel. That was the first test of Avraham Avinu, to leave the comfort and the success. And when I say I mean all success. He was having financial success. He was having success in terms of his teaching people, welcoming guests, bringing people under the kanfei hashchina, and yet he was tested with traveling and leaving Ur Kasdim and Haran, which was in modern-day Iraq, and making his way to Eretz Yisrael. So here we see the first real mention in the Torah. Now, interestingly, he's not told where he's meant to go. That's true. We're just told, he's told about the departure, but not the arrival point. He ends up in Israel, so we know that's, where it was. And interesting, when he turns up, there's a famine, he has to leave. But that's another aspect of the challenges that come with living in the land of Israel, right? It's not an easy mitzvah to fulfill. And if you're like me, driving in Israel for the past couple of weeks, you know exactly what I mean, because driving in Israel is an extremely dangerous occupation, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so that's the mitzvah given to him. Look inside, V'yom Hashem el Avraham. At this point, it's not Avraham, he's Avram. Lech lecha mi'aretzecha, v'u'meratzecha u'beit avicha. Interestingly, I always mention this in my introduction to Judaism class, what's unusual about those three words? He's going to leave your land, your relative, and your father's house. It's not the same thing. It's three different things. Your land, your country, your relatives, your community who live around you, and your actual bayit, where you live. It's three different things.
Maybe the order?
The order, what's wrong with the order?
It goes smaller.
Nope. It's backwards.
Yeah.
It's backwards. When you leave somewhere, first you leave your father's house, then you leave your community, your town, your city, then you leave your country, right? It's the wrong way around. The Ramban asked this question, and he answers it and says, this is not a geographical description of Avraham Avinu's leaving, it is a difficulty one. It's hard to leave your country because that defines who you are, right? Everything you are, your culture. It's harder to leave your community, your relatives, people you live around, and your community. Those are the people who make you. But it's hardest to leave your father's house in terms of changing, because remember, he came from a Beit Avodah Zarah. His father was a idol worshipper. Actually, he had a business in idol worship. But leaving everything he learned as his childhood from his father's house was the hardest. And Hashem says he's going to start a new nation in the land of Israel, and you have to leave those three behind. So it's ascending degrees of difficulty, says the Ramban. Can you see it? Yeah? It's not it can't be geographical, it's backwards. So it must be something else. It's a side point, but it's a very interesting one. Okay? And he says, the land I'm going to show you, and I'm going to make you you're going to become a great nation in that land. So we know that the growth of the Jewish people is directly linked to the land of Israel. And someone was pointed out to me. He goes, when you think of a typical Jew in Israel, right? Typical Jewish man and woman, right? They're like strong, gibor. You think of an average Jew, like outside of Israel, I was like a little Jew weakling, you know what I'm saying? Like a Woody Allen kind of character. Right? The land of Israel produces great people. Even the air, says the Gemara in Israel, is machkim. The air of Israel makes you wise. Just breathing it in. Actually, we took my kids to Hebron last week to Marat HaMachpelah, because 10 times a year, I was just telling Sarah, 10 times a year they open up Ulam Yitzchak, where Yitzchak is buried. The whole year they close it, which I am disgusted with, but we'll leave that aside. But 10 times a year, and one of those times a year was during Sukkot. So we went there, and getting in was a whole process. There's thousands of people who go in. You got to park, you take a bus, a whole zek, and all of that. So my son says to me, he walks in, he goes, Abba, it's true. So he goes, I smell Gan Eden. I was like, what? What are you talking about? Right. He goes, I smell it. He goes, there's a man there, rabbi there, and he's talking. I went to listen, and he says, this is where Adam Rishon and Chava are buried, and that's the entrance point to Gan Eden. And if you smell, you smell Gan Eden, Garden of Eden. So what does it smell like? He says, like dirty rocks. So there is an idea that Gan Eden, the entry point into Gan Eden actually is in Marat HaMachpelah, which is why the first piece of land that was bought for an exorbitant sum and mentioned in the Torah is Avram Avinu buying Marat HaMachpelah to bury his wife Sarah. He ends up being buried there himself, and Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. Very good. You didn't fall into the Rachel trap. Rachel was not buried together. She was buried in Bethlehem, which my daughter went to visit and pray at instead. Okay? Or not instead, another time. Okay? So it is because so it's important to know that the Abraham ended up spending a lot of money. By the way, Ephron quoted a vast amount of money. He didn't haggle with him, which is the tradition in Israel, right? You haggle for everything. Right? People walk to a hotel, I'll haggle with you. Abraham did not haggle as if to say there are no reductions. He bought it as an achuzah to bury his wife and himself and his descendants, and he learned, by the way, that was the burial place of Adam and Chava. How did he find out? Anybody know? Very hard question. How do you know that was the place where Adam and Chava were buried? Was there a big sign saying, Adam and Eve buried here? So the Ben Ish Chai, I think, says, I read this inside once, that when he was looking for bakar to feed the three guests, the three angels that came to him, in the merit of looking for the bakar, he found the kever. It's the same letters rearranged. So Avram found the kever, bakar, cattle, to feed the guests. Remember the three angels came to him? Mm-hmm. So in the merit of that, he said, this is what Adam is, and I'm going to buy this piece of land. And he bought it for a vast amount. He didn't haggle, and he gave it as if to say that the acquisition of Avram Avinu lasts forever.
I thought it was that he was going to give him like a really low price, but he gave
he started by saying, you're a typical salesman. Ephron's a bad man. No problem, I give you a cheap price. He goes, whatever you're going to pay, I'm going to pay. And it's like 400, country, and vast amount of whatever the gold coins were in those days. They've calculated it was literally like tens of millions of dollars worth. Avram was very wealthy, but he was willing to spend it on which was basically just a field. Literally a field. That's what it was, yeah. Sorry, my head's still in Marat Machpelah, that's why I'm talking about it, but it's important, yeah.
Just going back to something you said earlier, can you say again who said that the land of Israel makes you wise?
It's a Gemara. Avira de Eretz, the Ara Mach makes you wise. It's a Gemara. Is it based on a pasuk? I can't remember, but the Gemara definitely says that. Right. And that triggered my story of my son, smelling out Gan Eden. There's like a hole over there. And okay, fine, it's all good. Okay, now Yitzchak was promised land of Israel as well. Why was Yitzchak promised land of Israel if his father Abraham was promised as well? This is very important information you need to know, my dear friends, because it hasn't been more relevant, I don't think, in the past 2,000 years. If Abraham was promised, why is Yitzchak promised? Usually you give a promise to an ancestor, and that's the end of it. Why is he being promised again? Have a look. V'yareh elav Hashem v'yomer al terem Yisrael, don't go to Egypt. Hashem ba'aretz. By the way, Yitzchak, after the Akedah, was not allowed to leave Israel. He became a korban, and korban after the Akedah, he never left Israel. Yaakov was in and out, in and out. We'll see Yaakov is going to represent Galut for that reason. Of all three, Yaakov Avinu is going to represent Galut because he leaves and comes back. He left against his will, being chased out by his brother Esav, and he came back wealthy with children. And so too, by the way, the Jewish people at the end of days are going to return to Israel with great wealth. That is why in the Amidah, the bracha of shofar, takash b'shofar in the Amidah, follows the bracha of mavarech shanim, great wealth, because the two are going to come together. And they say when they see the Jewish people being very wealthy, returning to Israel and buying lots of property, which they are, you know Mashiach is close. We'll get to that later on. That's going to be Yaakov. So we're going to follow the same footprint as Yaakov. But now we're up to Yitzchak. Yes, Elisheva.
Can you remind me, did Avram find out before or after he bought it that Machal was pregnant?
Oh, before. He found it before when the three guests came. He's like, oh, remind me to buy that plot of land so I can bury myself there as well. He knew that was the entrance to Gan Eden. Okay? So why was Yitzchak promised? The silence is deafening. Why was Yitzchak promised? So was Abraham. Let's say only Abraham was promised. What might a person have thought, understandably but incorrectly?
Let's say what?
Let's say that only Avraham Avinu was promised the land of Israel. What might you have thought? It's also for Yishmael. So now we're narrowing down the line. Right? Because Avraham had a child. Yishmael will be like, hey, my dad was promised it. I'm a son of my dad. All right, I get the Yerusha. And says, no, it's not going through your line. It's going through Yitzchak. Yishmaelim do not get the land of Israel. It's not theirs. They may have conquered parts of it and still hold on to parts of it and try to get a hold of it, but it's not their Yerusha. Now, we're going to see, it's going to sound weird, but I'm going to show you the source for this, and it's actually in your future books. They do get merit and do get parts of Israel in Olam Hazeh before Mashiach comes. And that's why, says Rav Chaim Vital, that's why they have Har HaBayit. That wasn't a coincidence. They were permitted to put it up there from Shemayim somehow because they do Brit Milah and they pray a lot. So we'll get that later on. But they do get it in Olam Hazeh. It's not a coincidence. Having said that, they don't get it in Olam Haba, and this is really an Olam Haba discussion. This is an Olam Haba discussion. Olam Haba meaning after Mashiach's arrival. That's what we're talking about. And actually, Avram himself, we're going to see the source inside. Avram himself is going to get to walk in it after Tchiat HaMeitim. So this promise was actually not technically fulfilled for Avram Avinu, because he was promised, the land of Israel, but he got there, he was kicked out, and he didn't live there, he didn't get to inhabit it properly, or his descendants forever. After Tchiat HaMeitim, he will. That's one of the proofs for Tchiat HaMeitim. When we get to Tchiat HaMeitim, we shall reflect on this piece of Torah. So that's Avram and Yitzchak. How about Yaakov? Why was Yaakov promised the land of Israel as well? V'yareh Elokim el Yaakov, Omavo Padam Aram. He's living in Padan Aram, and Hashem blessed him and said, you're no longer Yaakov, your name is now Yisrael. And I promised the land to Avraham, and then I promised it to your father Yitzchak, and I'm promising you, why is Yaakov being promised the land as well? Because of Esav, So Esav will be like, hey, whoa, what's going on? My grandfather had it, so I'm part of the family. Right? Forget Yishmael. I also came from Abraham. No, you don't get it either. Okay? The Jewish people, yes.
Wasn't Ishmael the firstborn? So what did he get instead?
What did Yishmael get as a Yerusha? Well, being the son of Avraham Avinu was definitely a major part of it. I don't think any particular piece of land per se. But the Torah does describe him as someone who's able to conquer vast amount of lands, and his hand is on everything, which he's done, but not the land of Israel. Okay? So the Jewish people also promised. That's why Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, I'm going to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. Va'alito min aretz, I'm going to take them up. One of the first references to the idea of going to Israel being an aliyah, which we'll talk about. Aleh min aretz is going to go up from outside to inside. El eretz tova, it's good. Urachava, and it's large. El eretz zevat chalav u'dvash, a land flowing with milk and honey. I heard a Devar Torah this Sukkot, which I'd never heard before. Eretz zevat chalav u'dvash. I always learned, which we're going to see inside, is a reference to a land flowing with milk, the milk of. Very good. Izim. Yeah, goats.
I just read that in your book, actually.
Oh, good. Goats and they were very plentiful in the land of Israel and still are. Goats and it's considered a high level of milk. And what's the honey? The honey of? Very good. Dates and figs, both of them. Right? You know, I read inside actually, I went for lunch somewhere in Sukkot. Someone showed me actually the Lavan is actually white wine. Look at that one. It's good to know. The land flowing with white wine. It's a sign of prosperity of wine going, right? White wine out of Israel. The grapes produce wine as well. That was the Eretz Zevat Chalav U'Dvash. Cool. I thought it was very cool. Okay.
Wait, is that here inside?
That pasuk is top of page 40.
Where does it say it was white and not?
No, the idea of Eretz Zevat Chalav. Chalav is milk. It's white, but it means white wine as well. And that's not the standard translation. Translation, it means milk. It refers to the milk of, as we'll see. Yeah. And we'll see who actually made that statement. It's a statement of the Gemara. We'll see who said it and what was happening in his life when he came out with that statement. Yeah.
So we're just talking that it went through Avram and then something.
Yeah. And now Yaakov. Each one is being promised independently the land of Israel to exclude other people. But why are the Jewish people now being promised the land? Why is Moshe Rabbeinu being told by Hashem, oh, by the way, go tell them in Egypt that we're going to this land? And why is it being praised? I'll take an answer. Why is the land being praised like this? And why are they being promised? So the answer is because they were scared to go. Leaving Mitzrayim was a big deal. Actually, we're going to see that most of the Jewish people who lived, well, they weren't Jewish people, most of the Ivrim, the Hebrews who lived in Mitzrayim, did not go. As it says in Parashat B'Shalach, Chamushim Yalu, only a fifth of the Jewish people, 20% left Egypt. So Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, entice them. Tell them it's the land, Zavat, Chalav, U'Dvash, it's beautiful and it's great food and great wine and great there. And it's large and it can hold you all. So at this point, he's being promised in order to tempt them to come out. Yeah, makes sense, yeah? He's being told to motivate them to want to leave. Because it was a big deal to get out. No one was leaving Egypt. I mean, leaving Egypt, first of all, you couldn't get out. So if you did get out, you only had a desert in front of you. Where are you going to go? Egypt was the greatest country of its day. It was the America of its day. Who's leaving Egypt? So he had to entice them. That's why it's more, descriptive over here as well. Okay? And Yoshua, 40 years later, is now told to tell the Jewish people to go into the land as well. He's also promised the land. But what's he being promised it for? Why is he being told? Look and say for Yoshua, chapter 1, verse 2 to 4. God says to Yoshua, Moshe, my servant, is dead. Now you go cross into the Jordan, you and all the Jewish people, to the land I give to them, children of Israel. Everywhere you put your foot is going to be given to you. Right? I promise Moshe Rabbeinu, I promise you from the desert to the Levant to the great Euphrates River. By the way, look at this description over here. Where is the Euphrates River? Where is Nahar Parat? It's in Lebanon. Where? I looked it up recently. It's way above Damascus. Biblical Israel is large. Very, very large. Now, we didn't capture all of it at that time. Actually, Avram Avinu was promised, if you look in the description of the Torah, the land of 10 nations. He only picked up how many? 7. When the Jewish people went in, when he got 7, Remember Yeshua goes in the land of the 7 Canaanite nations? Write that down, by the way. This is a mistake everyone seems to make. There were 7 Canaanite nations who lived in Canaan when the Jewish people entered in at the time of Yeshua. There were 70 total nations in the entire world, but 7 lived in Canaan. But Avram was promised a land of 10 nations. What 3 were missing? The Canaanite, the Kenizi, and the Kadmoni. So when are we going to get that? When Mashiach comes. The land of Israel is going to be much, much higher, larger, upwards, and to the east, and down to the south as well. Kadmoni. I think those are the 3, if I remember correctly. It's in your future book somewhere. So we're going to pick up a much larger area. By the way, make no mistake, people say to me, Israel's not big enough. Israel's way big enough to hold all the Jewish people today. Most of the Jewish people live in literally a third of the country, like popping out from, the West Bank and through Tel Aviv. You could fit in all the Jewish people. You could fit all the Jewish people in one apartment building in Brooklyn, right? You could definitely fit in all in Israel, you know what I'm saying? It's no problem. It's absolutely no problem. But it's going to be much larger anyway. One of the jobs of kings, historically speaking, was to conquer land and make it part of Israel. You know that. That's what he was saying. Everywhere you set your foot becomes yours. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, says something amazing. He says, why was a king making Israel big, doing these voluntary wars in Milchemet Reshut in order to conquer land if Israel's big enough? And he says, if the land of Israel is special and it's kadosh, and we the Jewish people want to make the world with more kedusha, it makes sense that he wants to make the land of Israel bigger. Bigger Israel, bigger kedusha in the world. That was the motivation of a king. It's a pretty crazy idea. Just so you know, that's a crazy, amazing idea. Why is he conquering Israel? Making Israel bigger, because more Israel, more kedusha. And we the Jewish people want to bring more holiness into the world. So you have more kedusha via the land of Israel.
Who wanted to do that, Yoshua?
Yoshua, but every king has the ability to do that. Every king of the Jewish people has the opportunity to do what's called a milchemet reshut, a voluntary war. Why is he doing that? Well, maybe to protect the land, which is the job of a king. He's a political leader, but also to increase the kedusha of the land itself.
Is that why Shlomo HaMelech tried to have such good foreign relations?
Yes. He did much more than that. He married many, many wives from other nations too, which kings do, right? To increase the kedusha. Unfortunately, it came with a challenge as well, which the repercussions of which we're maybe still living with. Okay.
If you give away land in Israel, then that's...
You've opened up a Pandora's box, Allah. Okay, I'm going to keep very calm right now. Let me tell you something. The only nation in world history that ever kicked its own people off its own land are the Jewish people in Israel, in Gaza in 2005. I was in Gaza because my year in Israel, my Shana, right? We stayed in Gaza is beautiful. It had businesses, it had shuls. The beach there is the nicest beach in Israel. It is stunning. It's an atrocity. And we're paying the repercussions of that right now. This is all a part of that. It wasn't great back then either, to be honest with you, right? Because they were militarizing it anyway. Are you allowed? So the general consensus is, in order to save a life, you can. You can give away land to save a life. However, it never works. It never worked to give away land and to remove Jewish presence from it. So it would be permitted to save a life, but since practically you see it never happens, it actually makes it more dangerous to live in the land of Israel. I think everyone agrees today it's completely asur. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had a point to make? Okay. All right. So that's Yoshua. So Yoshua is being told to get into the land itself. And by the way, so why is he being promised? Because he's got to get the Jews to get into Israel. We're about to go to war. He's got all these Canaanites. They're very scared. So he's like strengthening Yoshua to say, we're going to go. Interesting, the first battle of Yoshua, one second, was the battle of Jericho, which needed no actual fighting. We just walked around. The Kohanim walked around 7 times, blowing the shofar up for 7 days, and the walls fell down. To teach you that all wars in Israel, you learn from that first war, are all miraculous. You learn from the situation of Jericho. After there were physical battles, like the following battle was the Battle of Ai. But that initial battle represents all future battles that Kadosh Baruch Hu gets involved in the wars. They're all miraculous. As a side point, worth knowing right now. Yeah.
You know what's interesting about I heard over this break that it says God told Yeshua to destroy I, which is AI.
Destroy AI. Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to leave that one hanging. Yeah.
Two questions. One, what is the Battle of Jericho show?
The Battle of Jericho, Yoshua was, the night before the Battle of Jericho, Yoshua was visited by an angel who tells him to take his shoes off and says he's going to die. Why? Because he was practicing warfare rather than learning Torah the night before the battle. So Yoshua says, yeah, but I'm about to go to battle. What do you want me to do? He says, no. This first battle is not going to involve any warfare. You're going to walk around and you're going to just walk in and take over. So to learn out from this first battle, the first time we conquered the land of Israel, that all future battles and the conquer of Israel comes from the Zchut of Torah, which you had to do that night instead, and from miracles. They're all min hashemayim. Future battles that Yeshua fought were physical, but that first one represents all future battles of Jericho, of Jericho. Okay.
We have another question.
Yeah.
They're talking about how Yeshua is going to conquer all 7 nations.
Yeah.
But you're saying like the 3 extra nations will have a different stuff?
Yeah.
Do we know like there's
No, we don't know who they are right now. We know the area. Again, it says the Euphrates River, which is, there's Lebanon, there's Damascus. The Euphrates River starts in Turkey. I mean, I looked this up on Wikipedia. It goes up, and it's way up there. I mean, it's just, I wouldn't say this publicly, although I am, but it covers a large area of land. All right? Okay, let's learn the first Rashi on Chumash. It's a fantastic Rashi, and really is the main claim. This Rashi could have been written by a rabbi last week, you know what I'm saying? But it's a very, very, as you're going to see. Now remember, this is Rashi's opening statement for the entire Torah, right? Because it's the first pasuk and the first commentary. Has anyone here learned this Rashi before? Okay, you got to know the first Rashi in Chumash. Let's do it together. Bereshit. By the way, why is it Bereshit?
Beginning.
Or why Ba? Why with a Ba? Why not Reshit? So when we talk about Olam Haba, we'll see. But I'll mention it now. The letter Bet is the number 2, yeah? Bet 2. Kadosh Baruch Hu created Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. It's also parentheses because you don't know what happened before. Before creation, we don't know what happened. No one knows what happened. We know from the point of creation. But before creation, we can't fathom what the world was because the Bet is like a parentheses that you can't penetrate. It only goes forward. Okay, when we get to Olam Haba, we'll discuss that. Okay, Bereshit bara Elokim et Hashemim v'Haaretz. Says Rashi quotes someone called Rabbi Yitzchak. No one really knows who this Rabbi Yitzchak is. Some say his father, right? Because he was called Rashi, is Yitzchaki. Something he wanted to start the Torah by quoting a lesson he heard from his father, Rabbi Yitzchak, as a form of Hakarat HaTov, which is very, very nice. I don't know if it's true, but I don't know who Rabbi Yitzchak is, and no one really does. Rabbi Yitzchak, Lo haya tzarich latchil et Torah. The Torah did not need to begin Ella, except Ma'chodesh Hazeh Lachem. What is that pasuk? Ha'chodesh Hazeh Lachem. What is that pasuk? It's the mitzvah to create a calendar. That's the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people as a nation in Mitzrayim. Start counting because they need to count from Pesach to Shavuot, Har Sinai. So create a calendar to start tracking the moon. Okay, we start tracking the moon from this point on. So he says, you know what? Just start the Torah. The mitzvah. What's the point of the Torah? Give you mitzvot. So Rashi gives a very weird answer from left field. But remember, Rashi always gives us pshat. Rashi is famous giving us pshat. So this answer must be in the realm. Sometimes he gives us drush, gives a drasha, but this must be in the realm of pshat. And this is the and he's whatever he's about to say, Rashi sees in the first pasuk, or quotes a rabbi who sees in the first pasuk. I would never have seen this in the first pasuk. I can't see. Usually you see it somewhere with an extra letter or word. But Rashi sees it. What does he say? The Torah begins not with the first ever mitzvah, but with the story of creation. She mitzvah Rishonos of Israel, or matam patach bereshit, mishum, look at the bottom of page 40. And he quotes King David, David HaMelech in Tehillim, Koach Masav Hegid La'amo. God has tremendous power of his acts, and he told his people that they have an inheritance of the land. What kind of answer is that? She'im Yomru, says Rashi, he's going to fill in the gaps. If you were to ask, or Umat Olam, or the nations of the world say to the Jewish people, Listim atem, you Jews are thieves. Good, you hear this every single day. Literally, every day. You Jews are thieves. Shekavashtem aratzot shivat goyim. You took the land of the 7 nations. You stole the land of Israel from the other nations. Right? Okay, in those days it was the Canaanite nations. Now it's Palestinians, whoever it is. Yeah? Hem omrim lahem. You have an answer. What is the answer to, you Jews are thieves, you stole the land of Israel from, you became colonizers. They love saying that, right? Actually, we're not colonizers, we are recolonizing for people who took away from us. We are the absolute example, my dear friends, something which people should celebrate. We had the land of Israel, it was colonized by the nations, and we recolonized it. It went back, everyone's complaining, oh, colonizing is the worst thing, you do it in England, they do it in Australia, they do it in America. We're recolonizing land that belongs to us. They should be giving us flights to Israel. They should be paying for us to get out there. Hem omru lahem. What's the answer? Kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The entire world belongs to God. Hu bara, he created. That's why the Torah begins with creation. Hu bara v'natna l'asher yashav be'enav. He decided to give it to whoever wants to give to. No, we didn't take it. God promised it to us. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Jewish people in Egypt, Yoshua, and therefore it's ours. God decided to give it to the Canaanite nations, and then he said, no more. Now it's the Jewish peoples. Rashi is saying the claim to the land of Israel goes back to creation. Not like later on, David HaMelech, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yoshua, no. The world was created with one goal in mind. That there's going to be a land called the land of Israel. By the way, this is in the first, you may not see it, but it's there. Rashi must see this idea in the first pasuk. He doesn't mention the second pasuk or the 15th, he mentions it here. He could have mentioned this anywhere. I wouldn't have put it here, but Rashi's saying the land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people. Always has. Why? Because the world belongs to God. How do I know? Because God created the world. Right? And therefore God decides who gets what's land. And the first Rashi on Chumash isn't, wow, how amazing the planet is, and God created this, God created that. The first thing is, God created the land of Israel, belongs to the Jewish people, and give it to whoever he wants to give it to. Yeah.
So how can people claim that Judaism is not synonymous with Zionism? This is the literal
Okay. Okay, so Zionism, first of all, comes in many forms. Is a very important movement. No one can argue that. That has led many, many people to move to the land of Israel. But that's a relatively new idea. Zionism, actually the word Zion comes from Zion. Zion refers to Yerushalayim. Right? The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is going to be mentioned, and we're going to see, by many, many prophets. And it's a guarantee that before Mashiach comes, the Jewish people are going to return to the land of Israel. Zionism actually is, although there were many religious Zionists, even no one ever says about Hasidic rabbis who wanted to return the Jewish people to the land of Israel. But as a political movement, a great one, an important one, and we're grateful for it, but that's not part of this. What is part of this is that the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, belongs to the Jewish people because God said so. And it was promised to our forefathers again and again and again, and to the entire Jewish people in Egypt, and to the Jewish people about to enter into the land of Israel. And the prophets we're going to see all talk about the Jewish people returning to the land of Israel at the end of days. That's all part of it. But to limit it to one particular movement at one time, you can't do. You can see that's an important movement and a great movement, but it can't just be limited to that.
Well, I just meant the concept of the turning back there.
That is fine. You want to call it Zionism in your modern day language, that's fine. That's a great thing. I'm a Zionist because I believe the Jewish people have an inheritance in the land of Israel, and that's the best place to be in the land of Israel is Tzion, Mitsuyan, special and important and remarkable. So the word Tzion comes from. Now, Zionism encapsulates a lot of secular ideology as well. It did, it's kind of losing that. Rav Kook actually says that Zionism is actually Mashiach ben Yosef. It's not actually a person, but it's actually a time. That's what Rav Kook said, which is a wild statement. Okay, well, when we get to Mashiach ben Yosef, we'll discuss that. You'll see that in your books as well. Yeah.
Who said that the purpose of the Torah is mitzvah?
Who says what?
The purpose of the Torah is mitzvah.
Well, that's where we get the mitzvah from the Torah. Where do you get the 613 mitzvot? From the Torah. So you can say the purpose of the Torah is it's unusual because the purpose of the Torah has other things too, right? It's the blueprint of the world. It's the learning from the avot and ima'ot. But ultimately, Torah is hora'ah, is order to teach us what to do, which is the mitzvot. That's what it comes down to.
So like there's so much more to the Torah than mitzvah.
True. But according to Rashi, it would be, you're asking a good question on Rashi. Why would that even be a havamina? Why would you even have that? There's lots of stuff in the Torah. So he seems to make the conclusion. That's because Rashi's pshat is that the reason we have given the Torah is in order to do the mitzvot.
Does anyone else think that? Or?
Sure it's mentioned elsewhere. But Rashi wouldn't exclude the amazing lessons we learn from the Avot, but that could have been put in the Gemara, right? Why would it put it in the Torah? Why does the Torah have to? You just say in the Gemara. Well, every event that happened to Avot was put in the Torah. Every story from Jewish history is put in the Gemara to learn from the oral Torah. Why in the Torah itself? Torah is there to teach us mitzvot. That's the primary purpose of it. That's Rashi's Havamina. Okay? So that's the Rashi. And that's the answer. And the answer is because God decided. So if you're a God-believing person, whether Islam or Christianity, I was walking around Israel. Where was I? I went to a place I hadn't been in like 40 years. I went to Shiloh, the site of the first Mishkan site. It was there for 369, 70 years. The Mishkan from the desert till it ended up in other places and then Yerushalayim. So a woman walks over to me. She says, "Well, you're a rabbi." So how could you tell? Was it my nose? And she said to me, "I'm a Christian, and I want to apologize to you because we're a group from South Africa. Very, very nice lady. And we are here to tell you that South African Christians are very pro-Israel. And they came as a group to Shiloh to celebrate and to talk and pray." It was very interesting. So we walked around with them, and so ultimately, anyone who believes in God believes in the Torah. Religion, I should say, whether Christian or Islam, because they come from the Torah. And Rashi's telling us that's the answer you give them. So if someone's an atheist, I don't know what you say to them. I guess, might is right. I don't know what claim does any nation have if I'm an atheist to any piece of land, I guess? Just take it over and you win it. And then you complain and apologize to all the indigenous people in the land. We don't because it's our land.
That's what we're doing though. Not the apology, but the fighting. There's a fallacy of okay, if you fight then you win, which is how it is, but then in this case it's not.
Well, we have to fight because we have to defend ourselves.
Right. I'm saying
Yeah.
the people that are the anti-Zionists or the people that are you guys don't deserve this land because you guys stole it.
Yeah.
That's what war is.
Precisely.
Right.
Or, well, not just the land. Maybe they want the resources, right? They want the power. There's a number of things that come with land. Here they're saying they have the claim to the land itself, and we have no claim to the land at all. At all.
How do we?
So that's exactly Rashi's saying that's the answer. You can say whatever you want. You could give the response that many people do, which is, hey, every country started by overtaking. America started that way, indigenous people, and Australia started that way when they sent over the British. They were indigenous in Australia, what are they called? Aborigines, right? Every nation always has, certain people who were there before and we overtook them, right? So how do you get out of that? So you say, okay, so the Jews are the same thing, but that's not it. That is a modern iteration. We've always had a presence in the land of Israel too. Always. It may have been reduced because we've been exiled, which we'll talk about, but we've always had a connection to the land itself. Okay? Okay, so that's the Rashi, and he gets that from the Midrash to show you that he ain't making it up. Bereshit Rabbah, 1-2. God gave it to us, and it's ours, and it's an eternal heritage. Okay? Oh, where did you get that from? Yeah, I guess it may be. No, that final piece at the bottom, I think, is from the Midrash. I don't think Rabbi Yitzchak comes from that Midrash. I don't think so. I haven't looked at the original. Well, maybe I did it some years ago. Okay, but that's the entire Rashi. Okay, that's where he gets the final idea from. Okay, and we're going to see many, many prophets who talk and discuss this idea right through history of the Jewish people coming to the land. And at the end of days, a major feature. I'm going to change that. One of the proofs that Mashiach is Mashiach, as well as being one of his 8 missions, is to return the Jewish people to the land of Israel. Okay? One of the proofs that he is Mashiach is he's going to return the Jewish. That we're going to see the Rambam who mentions that when we get to Mashiach. Okay? Okay, and we'll see many other prophecies. Okay, let's talk about the land itself. We mentioned this already, just a few more minutes. Okay, so the land itself is uniquely distinct and different. Okay, we see the land of Israel is related to differently. So it says, and this is Moshe Rabbeinu, in his final address, he gave a 1-month speech, which is all a Sefer Devarim, to the Jewish people, because he's not going to go in, so he's like trying to, excite them about going to the land. He's also warning them. There's a lot of warning, right? Sefer Devarim. He's rebuking them not to mess up and get kicked out, which ended up happening. But he's also inspiring them. So he's saying, that God himself is going to bring you El Eretz Tova, Eretz Nachle Mayim, streams of water, Einat Almod Yotzim B'Kamahar, is a water coming out from valleys and mountains, which is weird, right? Don't usually have that. A land of Chita, Sorah. This list should sound familiar to you. Gefen Te'ina Rimon, Eretz Zayt Shemen Dvash. These are the 7 species that are native to the land of Israel. Yeah. Eretz. Ashalom Eskot Ochal Balechem, Lo Tachsav. Kol Ba'ever you want could be in the land of Israel. Eretz Asher Avnei Barzel. Makes no sense. There's no very little natural, geographical, land to give you everything you need, right? Unlike Egypt, where they had the Nile that came and watered, Israel depends upon rain. Right? It needs rain. Right? Saying that the land itself shouldn't naturally give off wonderful fruits and waters, but it does. Va'achalta, you're going to eat. V'savata, you're going to be satisfied. Uveirachta et Hashem Elokei, you're going to bless the Lord your God. Al ha'aretz, on the land, hatova Hashem that he gave you. Again, it says it again and again and again. This is our land, given to the Jewish people. One of the insults which are thrown at me, I'm sure many other rabbis too, but I get a lot of it because I have, quite a big online presence, is, this is just another Khazari rabbi. I told you this already? There's a book called the Kuzari, written by Yehuda Levi, based upon a true story about a debate about a king who lived in a land called Khazar, somewhere in, the Caucasus Mountains, whatever. And whoever won this debate gets to, the king is going to convert his entire nation into their religion. So there's a debate between a rabbi, a priest, and an imam. Yeah? In the debate, the story goes, the rabbi won, and they all converted to Judaism. And about 200-300 years later, Rabbi Yehuda Levi wrote up a fictional account of what this debate probably had in it. Got it? And that's called the Kuzari. It's a very famous book, translated to English. Happens a lot of this book is all about the land of Israel and the connection of the Jewish people with the land itself. Anyway, what's interesting is that nowadays, if someone says to you, you're just another Khazari, you'll see on the internet, you're a Khazari. Why they say Khazari? They're saying that the Jews today, and many people believe this, vast amount, are not connected to the original Jews that inhabited the land of Israel. They want to disconnect this. Can you see that? If they say we are just descendants of converts who in the, 900s, whatever it was, converted to Judaism, then you're saying you're just a nation who adopted this whole Israel thing and just took it over, but it's not rightfully yours because you're not the original Jews. Do you know what I'm saying? Is what I'm saying making sense to you? So many times people say, oh, he's just another Khazari Jew. Or they'll call me in the comments section, he's just another Khazari rabbi. In other words, he's not connected to the religion, just a guy who just became Jewish and there's no connection to the original Jews. And we're the original Jews. It's like those crazy, the black Hebrews, those crazy, like Israel, that's what they're saying. They're saying we're the real Jews because this is just a converted population. They're wrong. Jewish people are genealogically and spiritually and physically from the land of Israel. All right, there is no dispute on this. I'm just telling you to look out for that in your adventures because it's going to get worse. Okay, so that's the Torah. So the Torah promises a beautiful land and it's good and he gives it to you. Comes along a very famous Gemara that all of you have never heard before but is the source of this. There was a rabbi called Rabbi Bar Yechezkel and he went to Bnei Barak. Right? He was a Haredi. I'm only kidding. Bnei Barak wasn't Haredi back then. It was a town in Israel near Tel Aviv. And he saw goats eating under fig trees. And honey was dripping from the figs and milk was flowing from the goats. And they mixed together. And he said, this is the land flowing with Zavat, Chalav, Udavash. This is the land flowing with milk and honey. Okay? So, it's cute. It's nice. By the way, there is a mitzvah to talk Lashon Tov about the land of Israel. The Gemara goes into great detail. Actually, the Torah does. One of the worst Lashon Haras you can do is about the land of Israel. Who do we see spoke Lashon Hara about the land of Israel? The Meraglim. And what happened to them? They. Right. So what is the connection? So the connection is that Lashon Hara and Galut are connected because they were kept in Galut. They spoke Lashon Hara. They weren't allowed in. They were kept in Galut for another 40 years. So Lashon Hara and Galut are deeply connected. Okay? Well, we know that, right? Because the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, Lashon Hara, and they were exiled. So the Chavetz Chaim says continuously in the Sefer Chavetz Chaim, it's all about the laws of Lashon Hara, that one of the ways to keep the Jewish people out of Israel, keep us in Galut, is Lashon Hara. And speaking Lashon Hara about each other, but also speaking Lashon Hara about the land itself, is considered a terrible, terrible sin. Speaking Lashon Hara. There were people who used to give shiurim, says the Gemara, in shady places, so that people would be like, oh, it's so hot in Israel. Oh, what am I doing here? Imagine that? People used to go around cleaning the land of Israel. The Gemara says, clean. People say, ugh, Israel's so dirty, full of garbage. Speak Lashon Hara about the land of Israel? It's crazy stuff. You don't mess with that. It creates Lo Aleinu Galut. There's a chapter in your book on Lashon Hara and how Lashon Hara needs to be worked on in order to get us back. That's what Chavetz Chaim says. He says that's the main reason we're still in Galut because of Lashon Hara. Yeah. Actually, he goes further. Sorry. He says if one community in all of world history doesn't speak Lashon Hara, we all go back. It doesn't take all of us. He actually says if one Beit Kinishta, one synagogue, were to have real shalom inside it and not speak Lashon Hara, Mashiach would come. That's a Chavetz Chaim. That means there hasn't been a synagogue in world history where there hasn't been Lashon Hara and Sirat Chinam. Obviously not, because we're still in Galut. Even Israel's Galut right now, as you know, sadly. Yeah.
What does Lashon Hara and Galut being connected have to do with this story from the Gemara?
Oh, it doesn't. It's just me. He was speaking very, very well about it. He's speaking Lashon Tov about it. That was the way I got there. But saying, just talking well about the land of Israel is a tremendous mitzvah. Okay? So the land of Israel has always been fertilized and beautiful, and we're going to see there is This is very important. I'm going to mention it now, but we're going to go deeper later. There is a connection between the agricultural success of the land of Israel and the Jewish people living on it. I'm going to say that again. The land itself responds to the people who are inside it. The land itself, like the physical land, the trees, the fruits, the vegetables. When the Jewish people are in the land and doing the right thing, the land itself gives up its fruits. When the Jewish people leave, it goes back into a dust bowl. And that's why for 2,000 years, although we had Jewish people there, we weren't the majority, and it didn't produce anything. So we go back, and suddenly it's like an exporter and giving off and technology and success. There's a deep connection between the land and the people there, which is why one of the proofs that Mashiach is close, say the prophets, and I'm going to show you these prophecies, one of the proofs that Mashiach is close is that the land of Israel starts to give us its produce. And that is written by 2 prophets, at least, that I know of. That when you see the land of Israel start to give off its fruits and vegetables, it's a sign the Geula is at hand. One reason, says the Radak, is because if you go to Aliyah, you need to eat fruit, right? You got a falafel, it comes from chickpeas. You got a tahina, it comes from sesame, right? So you need the food. Another reason is so the non-Jewish nations be like, wow, land of Israel is miraculous. They turned into such an aspiring, amazing, financially successful state. It must be from Hashem. That's what Radak says. One of the commentaries. The proof that the Mashiach is close is the financial success of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And that's when Jews are there, it gives off its fruits, and then we get kicked out of Gush Katif, and it goes back into nothing. Which is why I brought down a piece from Josephus. Right? He was the Jewish historian in the days of the Romans. And he says, by the way, and he gave a very accurate description. He says the whole area is fantastic. There's trees, there's fertile. This is before the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash, right? Everyone's working the land, everything's giving off. There are thousands of inhabitants over here. And then for 2,000 years, it was once they kicked the Jews out, not all of them. There's always been Jews in the land of Israel. Once they kicked out the majority of the Jewish people, it went back into nothing. Yeah.
He was before the destruction of the
Yeah.
first or the second?
Second. The Romans hired him as a historian. Okay. So that's why the Maharsha says, let's just do 3 more, then we'll finish off. The Maharsha says, as long as Israel does not dwell in its land, the land does not give its fruits. Okay? And that's why one of the signs that Mashiach is coming is Hashem prepares Mashiach's arrival with people and with fruits. You've got to make it financially successful. That was the Maharsha, one of the commentaries at the back of the Gemara. All yeshiva boys know, go to the back of the Gemara and look at the Maharsha. So he says the time of redemption is approaching when all of Israel will return to their land and the fruits start to grow again. But he wasn't a prophet, he was a great rabbi. The prophets say that very clearly. Actually, they start to tell you what fruits or what vegetables or trees are going to come out of which part of the land. I mean, they double down on all of that. Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll stop there because the next piece is going to take me about 20 minutes talking about making aliyah, physically aliyah or spiritually. We'll talk about that next class. And there will not be a midterm on Thursday, most likely Tuesday week. But I'll put in the WhatsApp group, but I know for sure. Okay, have a great, successful day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.